Hello everyone, and welcome to our first episode. This format's going to be a little different than the other videos that I do. It's going to be more of a kind of a rant-like video. I want to talk about certain topics. And the first one I want to talk about is the state of video game collecting. I've seen a lot of videos by other YouTubers, Gamester81, Pat the NES Punk, for example, who have talked about this, and have talked about the way prices have just gone through the roof lately. And about how it's become less interesting and even kind of frustrating to actually collect because of the way the prices for these classic games have skyrocketed. And there's a lot of parallels, really, between what's happening in the video game market and what happened to the comic book market in the mid-90s. If you remember back in the mid-90s, anyone who collected comic books back then you remember that comic books started to really grow up in demand. You had a lot of people who had never read a comic book before in their life. All of a sudden they started buying them in mass. They started hoarding them. They kind of figured like that little collection or whatever the comic books were that they bought was going to pay for their kids' college education or something. And they would buy up multiple copies. I remember I used to collect. I collected about up until about 1997. I had about 5,000 comic books I've been collecting since the mid-80s. And I remember going to the comic book store looking for my weekly issues. Every week I would go to the comic book store and pick up whatever ones had arrived. And I remember going many times to the comic book store and finding that the issues that I hadn't reserved, that there was one that I collected but hadn't told the guy to save for me, that all the copies were gone. And there would be one person who bought 4 copies of one issue because that one had some special coupon, or it had a special foil cover, or it had some poly bag, color form, shrinky dink, glow in the dark cover or whatever, and that was going to be worth $1 billion in 10 years, and he was going to be set for life when he sold it. And now most of those comics that those people bought aren't good enough to wipe your behind with. And little by little, people began to realize that everyone was buying the comic books and hoarding them, but nobody was buying the comic books as, you know, something to invest. Like, nobody would, you go and buy a comic book thinking that you're going to save this, and that you're going to save this, and that every time you wanted to sell it, you would put it out there, and some collector would come and give you a really big bucks for it. And while there were lots and lots of people buying and hoarding these comics, there was no one buying what was being hoarded. So eventually, all you had was a very large amount of people with large amounts of worthless comics, and the market fell out. And now comic books have really taken a hit in value. And I think video games are going the same way. I mean, I love the Genesis. Everybody knows that's my favorite system. Genesis, Sega CD32X. That's me. That's what I like. That's my the focus of my collection. But I collect and play bunches of other systems. I mean, I own every Nintendo console, you know, and I had TurboGrafx and Atari. I mean, if I can get it and play it and get games for it, I'll buy it. I don't care what it is. But anyone who's into retro gaming has to have noticed the insane Nintendo market right now. I mean, it is absolutely insane. The prices that people are asking for NES games, and especially Super Nintendo games. I mean, it seems like any game that somebody has, if it's in a Super Nintendo cartridge, that means it's got to be worth at least $50. You know, I've seen games like Run Saber. Run Saber was a game that I found loose copies for $5, not even 4 years ago. And now that game is going for $40, $50. I mean, and just the insane amount of games that are really high in price. And the thing is, these are games like, you're going to tell me games like Hagane, that was a Blockbuster exclusive, you know, to have a complete copy of that. Okay, fine. That game is rare. Not only is it rare, but it's an excellent game. So that game being worth a lot of money, I can understand that. But like, Run Saber is a mediocre Strider clone, and just because it's not complete total crap, boom, it's skyrocketing in price. I mean, these are games that are not even uncommon. I mean, look at Earthbound. Earthbound probably is the example that's most frequently used, and that's probably because it's the best example. I mean, we're looking at a game here that is not uncommon by any means. You go on eBay anytime and you're going to find bunches and bunches of copies. It's a great game. It is. It's a great game. But enough to be worth the $300 something it was going for? It's dropped now, but it got up there in price. No. You know, and I've noticed as I go through eBay looking for the games I have left to get in my Genesis collection, that there are games now that have gone up in price, and I have to look at those games and ask myself, what the hell? I mean, you look at a game like Flicky. Go on eBay at any time and look at Flicky, and Flicky is at least $17 boxed and complete. Shove It, the warehouse game. I pieced together a copy. I got the insert for like $2 in one place, and the game and the manual for I think $8 someplace else, and $3 shipping. So I got a complete copy for $13. But that game complete on eBay is in the $18, $19 range. You know, $18 for Shove It, for Flicky. These games are not uncommon at all. There's always a shit ton of them on eBay, and they're not the kind of game that you would say, oh my god, the demand for Shove It is through the roof, let me get a copy before they're all gone. You know, even good games. I mean, look at Musha. Musha's a game that for years was in the $50 to $70 range, and now I've seen copies going for like $200, $300. Musha is a great game. It's one of the best shooters on the Genesis, but it's not uncommon at all. And you're going to tell me that all of a sudden, you know, people just woke up one morning and say, man, God, I have an urge to play some Compile. Let me go get some Musha, you know? It just, where does it come from, you know? And Pat the NES Punk was hypothesizing that perhaps, you know, there are people who have collected everything they can collect on Nintendo, and so now they're transitioning over to the Genesis. I don't know how much I agree with that, because from my experience, the people who collect Nintendo don't tend to collect Sega, you know? They tend to stick with the Nintendo consoles, and I would say that, like, if they finish collecting what they're going to get for the NES, they move on to the SNES, or they move on to the Nintendo 64 or Game Boy, but they don't transition over to Sega consoles. But there could be a decent amount of people, or a number of people, who would actually do that. But I just think it's people in general are trying to jump on the bandwagon and just try and get as much money out of the market before it collapses. Like I said, same thing that happened with comic books. The bottom line, the question that everyone needs to ask is this a good thing? Well, if you're a collector and you're hoarding games because you intend to pay for your kids' college education with them, no. No, it's not. It's not. The market is going to fall out, and you're going to be left with a bunch of games that you're going to end up looking at, and you're going to have to decide for yourself, do I want to keep these because they're great games and I want to play them, or did I only want to make money? And if not, you know, if all you want to do is make money, you're not interested in the games for what they are, then you're going to be looking at a bunch of games that aren't going to make you any money at all. But if you want to collect because you love the systems, because you want to play the games, because you enjoy them, because you want to feel that magic of when you were a kid again, you know, that made those games so special to you, or because they're just damn good games. You know, the whole nostalgia thing is another argument, another discussion that we can have, and we probably will in another video. But to hell with what nostalgia and whether or not they bring back the little magic fuzzy feelings of your childhood. If the games are good, if they're good games that are fun to play, then it doesn't matter how old you are. A good game is a good game, you know? And the fact of the matter is, you should be collecting these games because they're fun and you enjoy playing them. Not because you're trying to buy back your childhood, or not because you're trying to pay for your retirement. You should be playing them and buying them because they're fun to collect and they're fun to play because they're good games. And if that's not the reason, you know, for buying them, if you're just trying to look at them as an investment, well, I have sad news for you, because the market's going to collapse and you're going to end up with a lot of product that you're going to have to make a decision on. And for those of us who buy them because we enjoy them, it's going to be a good day, because those prices are going to come down and a lot of us are going to end up finishing our collection. So do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Leave your comments below. Please thumbs up the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you for listening and watching.